You know that old saying, you can't compare apples and oranges? Well, in the world of business and investing, that's pretty much the whole job. We have to figure out how to do it. So how do you actually measure the real-world impact of two totally different companies? It feels like it should be impossible, right? But today, we're going to show you the standard that makes it all possible.
I mean, really think about it. You've got this global giant churning out millions of products, and then you have a small startup, carefully crafting a few thousand items in maybe one workshop. On the surface, trying to compare their environmental footprint or their social impact just seems fundamentally unfair.
Exactly. Their scales are just worlds apart. But what if there was a framework, a kind of common language that could level that playing field? A system that was literally designed to help us make these kinds of meaningful comparisons? Well, guess what? There is.
And that standard language comes from the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB for short. You can think of them as the people who created a universal toolkit for measuring a company's impact.
So the whole point of the SASB standards is to create that common language we've been talking about. The goal is to get companies reporting on sustainability topics in a way that's consistent, that's comparable, and most importantly, reliable from one company to the next. So, what are they, really? Well, at the core, it's a set of 77 different standards, and each one is tailor-made for a specific industry. And that's absolutely crucial because it makes sure that the information companies are reporting is actually relevant to how they operate and the real risks they face.
You know, a really great way to think about it is like a recipe book. If everyone follows the exact same recipe using the exact same measurements, you can actually compare the final cakes, right? Well, SASB does the same thing for company data. It just makes sure everyone is measuring and reporting in the same way.
Okay, so how does this recipe book help us compare our huge toy company to that little startup? Well, the secret ingredient, if you will, is something called activity metrics.
Activity metrics are, honestly, beautifully simple. They're just numbers that measure the scale of a business, like how much stuff they actually make or how many places they make it in. And their entire purpose is to let us normalize data, and that is the key to a fair comparison. All right, let's get specific and apply this to our example. For the toys and sporting goods industry, SASB points to two essential activity metrics, and these two little numbers can tell us almost everything we need to know about a company's scale.
The first one, and it's the most fundamental, is annual production.
And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's just the total number of individual products a company makes in a single year. It is the most basic measure of a company's output, but it's incredibly powerful for giving us some much-needed context. The second key metric is the number of manufacturing facilities. And honestly, when you dig into the details here, this is where it gets really, really interesting.
See, here's the key detail. It's all about scope. SASB says companies have to report not just the factories they own, but also all the facilities they directly contract for manufacturing. This one simple rule gives us a much more honest picture of a company's true operational footprint. And this illustrates the second part of that metric perfectly, the percentage of those facilities that are outsourced. A company might only own a handful of factories, but if it contracts with hundreds more around the world, well, that tells a completely different story about its supply chain and all the potential risks involved. Okay, so we've got these two numbers, units produced and facilities used. So what? How does this actually help us? Well, this is the payoff. This is where it all comes together. These simple numbers matter so much because they unlock the power of normalization. And that's just a fancy word for taking raw data and putting it into a context that finally allows for a fair apples-to-apples comparison. And this is where it all just clicks into place. So look at the raw data here. Company A looks terrible, right? 10 times worse, 500 safety incidents compared to Company B's 50. But the moment we use our activity metric, annual production, to normalize that data, the story completely flips on its head. Company B is actually far less safe on a per-toy basis. Now that is the kind of critical insight that is just impossible to see without context.
This quote really sums it all up perfectly. By providing that context, these metrics completely shift our perspective. We stop focusing only on the big raw totals, how much waste, how many accidents, and we start asking much smarter questions about performance and efficiency and effectiveness.
So the next time you see a headline about a company's environmental impact or a social issue, you'll know to ask the crucial questions. What's the context? What's the scale? Now that you understand the standard language, what hidden stories do you think you'll uncover in the data?